Once upon a time. When you hear these words, you already know what type of story you're about to hear. You're already conditioned to expect further lines, like magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? But why do these stories continue to be told? Why don't we outgrow them? My name is Christy DeVlieger, and I am a writing and English literature major working on a minor in anthropology. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation on meaning making in the spaces of fairy tale metamorphosis. I'd like to take a moment and thank both Dr. McLeod and the McNair Scholars Program for the opportunity to do research on this topic. When I began this project, I knew I was interested in fairy tales and their narrative structure and conventions. I wondered why they continue to last in popularity and how they are transformed by writers. If fairy tales help us make sense of our world, then how do they do that? If we, as writers, understand how fairy tales function to stabilize society, their role in meaning making, and the metamorphosis of the original text, then we can write a new generation of fairy tales that reflect the needs of our communities. Fairy tales are stories that are magical, contain classic motifs, patterns, and symbolism, enforce social order or subdue it, yet are undergoing constant change because of their storytellers and duplication. An everyday hero faces a struggle that results in an external transformation. Now, this can be physical, like the Frog Prince, or it can be in social status and destiny, such as in Cinderella. Fairy tales are varied, yet they share the same narrative structures riddled with gaps such as their lack of description, characterization, and plot. We turn to fairy tales when we need to feel like we belong, that everyone is searching for happiness, and that behaving correctly will produce guaranteed results. They reassure us that our troubles are universal, and we too can achieve a utopian happily ever after. Fairy tales are stories of metamorphosis because they guide the reader through the process of transformation from a child to an adult. In this way, they serve as an initiation story because they create stability by providing a way to respond to the identity crisis we face as we cross a new stage in our lives. Norman Girardot, a religion studies scholar, proposed that the fairy tale Snow White fulfills the 3 stages of initiation: separation, liminality, and reincorporation. The first phase, separation, is the transition away from the parental unit. In the Grimm's version, this occurs when the huntsman takes Snow White into the forest and she cannot return to the castle. The second stage is liminality, or a period of ambiguity, where our hero is figuring out who they are as a person. This is the period of time when Snow White is with the dwarves, who guide and watch over her while she undergoes stasis, or the death-like sleep she experiences. The last is reincorporation, where the final transformation into an adult occurs. In fairy tales, this transformation only can occur because the hero has been helped, saved, or protected by someone else. Snow White wakes as a result of chance. A servant stumbles while carrying the coffin, and the poisoned apple piece falls from her throat. But what's more important about that, though, is the way that these stages are handled in different versions of the story. It's a common belief that fairy tales have a hidden meaning, buried within the motifs and patterns. These meanings are affected by our own internal social constructions and perceptions that are always in play, our personal experiences that make up our knowledge and responses to events. We apply these personal experiences to the gaps in fairy tales, narrowing the distance between fairy tale reality and our own, creating a rich environment in our minds that results in meaning making. It is as if the fairy tale has taken the reader by the hand, guided her in linking emotion with memory, affirmed for her that this linkage is rightful, and thusly ushered her out of emotional chaos and into a place of self-acceptance. Elizabeth Bolton, a master's student at the University of Toronto, wrote this about the process that occurs unconsciously within the reader of fairy tales. The basic principle of transactional theory is that readers construct meaning from a text by using their personal social constructions. Louis Rosenblatt, the scholar who developed the reader response theory, proposed that transactional theory was the relationship between the reader and the text as a transaction or an exchange. Both the reader and the text maintain a mutual relationship where the text stimulates the reader, who responds as the text demands, providing the meaning through their own experiences. In fairy tales, this is usually an inherent process. The text is comprised of one-dimensional features such as a lack of characterization, description, and personalization. This allows readers to fill those spaces with their own experiences, building the story up and creating personal meaning that can lead to the resolution of internally held conflicts. So as a reader follows the traditional path of the fairy tale's narrative, they are filling in these blanks with their own memories and experiences, resolving the conflicting feelings that they have related to those memories. Fairy tales reflect the values of their cultures and societies, displaying their morality and ideological norms. Every time a fairy tale is retold, the storyteller leaves behind their own imprint, building on the story that was already there. This intentional altering of the stories for their own cultures was done to reinforce societal ideals and to address the conflicts that arose within the society. This alteration, though, was more than just memetic or imitation, because it was not merely a copy of the story, but it's actually memetic, or a copy that has been folded back upon itself. This folding back is a large part of the reason why there are so many commonalities among all the different versions of Snow White. Jack Sipes, a well-known fairy tale scholar, compares the evolution of fairy tale to meme, like this one on the screen, showing the wicked stepmother from Disney's Snow White. Without familiarity of the fairy tale or of the movie or Instagram, the inside joke is obsolete. Yet it points out something more than just these outside contexts. It identifies the same thread of vanity in the stepmother's obsession with the mirror's response and the modern-day need for validation that can be found by posting selfies on Instagram. In 1976, Richard Dawkins, an evolutionary biologist, was the first to coin the term meme, or a catalyst for cultural evolution. To Dawkins, meme is a cultural unit or idea that competes to be perpetuated and must be replicated in order to survive. According to Wiggins and Bowers, digital cultural scholars, the memetic transformation of internet memes occurs in three categories: spreadable media, emergent meme, and regular meme. Now, fairy tales undergo these same types of transformations. Wiggins and Bowers found in their 2014 study that the meme viewed as a genre is not simply a formula followed by humans to communicate, but is a complex system of social motivations and cultural activity that is both a result of communication and impetus for that communication. Memes consist of repeated forms and literary moves guided by human culture, which deliberately alters them. Now, in the same way, the shift from the oral tradition in the 16th and 17th centuries toward print culture resulted in the reshaping of fairy tales for their new, civilized, upper and middle class audiences. This shift took the oral wonder tale from the general populace and placed it into the hands of the literate few. The Europeans who wrote them down and published them left behind their own imprints, sanitizing and altering the original oral tale. Snow White is a fairy tale that shows its memetic evolution through the inclusion and exclusion of specific features. In particular, I studied two versions of the tale: the Celtic Silver Tree and Gold Tree by Joseph Jacobs, and the German Little Snow White by the Brothers Grimm. Now, both of these stories are stories of rivalry and jealousy and contain the motif of the sleeping or resurrected princess, but each of these displays the imprint of their culture differently. For instance, while we are all familiar with the German magic mirror, in Silver Tree and Gold Tree, it's actually a talking trout in the bottom of the well that incites the jealousy of the mother Silver Tree. Now, interestingly, in the Celtic tale, it retained the biological mother aspect that is only found in the original Grimm version. In the German tale, the father is an absent figure, mentioned but never actually present, a really important absence in a story where the jealousy provoked by the girl's beauty is likely a result of competition for his favor. In the Jacobs version, the king is aware of his wife's jealousy, sends away the girl for marriage, but seems to forget the reason a year later, and then again the following year, when he allows the queen to visit her. It's unclear how the king really feels about his daughter, just that the Celtic king is unwilling to have her killed. But I think it's important to note that while the Grimm version lacks a true father figure, and it has been argued that the huntsman fills this temporarily, in a way the seven dwarfs fulfill this role, guiding Snow White, offering her a home, and waking her from the slumber the first two times before finally watching over her while she sleeps in her magical slumber. Likewise, the mechanism of the enchanted sleep is different between both tales, and the results are different as well. In the German version, Snow White is entombed in a glass coffin, while in Silver Tree and Gold Tree is locked into a room where she can then be later discovered by the prince's new second wife. Now this is the really interesting part, if you ask me. In many ways, this second wife can be viewed as the doubling of the jealousy. Gold Tree is so beautiful, her own mother wanted to kill her not once, not twice, but 3 times, just like Snow White's stepmother. But instead, the second wife, who is never named, plays a pivotal role in the story, for not only is she the one who wakes Gold Tree, but she offers to leave once she has awoken. The prince chooses to keep them both, and later the second wife is actually the one who defeats Silver Tree, offering an example of a healthier female relationship that is lacking from the German version. These changes between the Celtic and German versions show some of the memetic changes of the text. Each version is clearly different from the other, yet there are enough similarities that you can tell that they are the same text in many ways. They were both written around the same time period. It's important to look at what has changed between each version, and figuring out why they're different can help lead us in the right direction toward the next stage in the evolution of these fairy tales. This needs to go beyond just being memetic, but needs to be memetic, folded back upon itself so that we recognize its original source, but find the transformation we need to create our own meanings. The role of metamorphosis in fairy tales is important because it teaches us about ourselves as a culture. Fairy tales serve to reinforce our ideological norms, remind us that we're not alone in the world, and confirm that our troubles and desires are universal. But our world is drastically different than the world that existed before the internet and cell phones. As a society, there is an overwhelming sense of dislocation among Americans, and I believe new fairy tales can answer that need. But in order to do so, we as writers need to understand how fairy tales function to stabilize society, their role in meaning making, and how effective metamorphosis can occur. Thank you for your time today. Please feel free to reach out with any questions or comments on this presentation, either through this recorded platform, email, or my personal website.